Hi. In today's video, I want to continue the series on the Civil War and focus on the events of 1863. Now, we all know the story about how Grant took Vicksburg and the North won the Battle of Gettysburg, coincidentally, both of them on the anniversary of the country's independence on July 4th, 1863. But what is less understood is the political backdrop of those two efforts. Why was Lee in Pennsylvania in the first place, trying to invade the North, fighting at Gettysburg? And why was Grant so intent on capturing Vicksburg as quickly as he possibly could? The answer lies in the only hope the South had for winning the Civil War, which was that they would bleed the North so much, and the war would become so unpopular in the North, that Abraham Lincoln would be defeated for re-election in November of 1864. And in fact, they came very close to that. Lincoln himself wrote a letter in August of 64, a few months before the election, saying, "I'm probably going to be defeated for re-election." In fact, Lincoln himself wrote a letter to his cabinet in August of 1864, just a few months before the election, where he said, "I think I'm going to be defeated, and let's figure out what we can do in the remainder of my term to win this war." Because the minute the new president takes place, who would have been John McClellan, who wanted to make peace, the North would obviously be unable to win and the South would become a separate country. So both sides were focused on the election of 1864, and Lee was determined to try to inflict a major blow to the Union, if possible cut the Union in half by marching through Pennsylvania, and in any case occupy a significant amount of Union territory so that the northern cities with a rebel army relatively nearby would vote against Lincoln and would vote for the peace candidate. It was a desperate move. Grant, on the other hand, was determined to win Vicksburg so as to give Lincoln a basis for running for re-election, because there was defeat after defeat in the East, and he hoped to offset that with victories in the West. But it was a political calculation more than anything else. Part of the problem was that Lincoln had widened the war in 1862 from a war for the Union to a war to free the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, one of the big reasons he did that is that the manpower losses in the Union Army were horrible. The casualty rate, the death rate, both from disease and from enemy action. And as a result, he had to get more and more soldiers to fill these ranks. And he had to resort to the draft to force people to come into the army. And that caused riots all throughout the North. The riots were so intense in 1863 and 64 that in New York, he had to actually bring the Navy up and threaten to shell Manhattan to get the riots, particularly the Irish who were rioting about that, not wanting to have to go fight a war to free the blacks. They were worried that the blacks would compete with them for jobs, and they were very concerned about that. So the draft sparked tremendous discontent and might well have led to Lincoln's defeat. Now, the Emancipation Proclamation, on the one hand, exacerbated the situation because it injected race and slavery as one of the war aims. But on the other hand, it made it easier because now he could enlist black soldiers in the Union armies. And increasingly, he didn't use the draft. Very few people were actually drafted. Most of the replacements for the white soldiers that were killed were black soldiers who voluntarily enlisted. And by the end of the Civil War, a quarter of the Northern Army was African American, and many of the key battles were fought by African American troops. But of course, Gettysburg was won by the North, Vicksburg was won by the North, Lincoln's fortunes gradually improved, and he won the election of 1864. We'll talk further about that in the next history video. Thanks for watching. I think I've mentioned earlier this week that this was the first week of my new radio show. It's from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, Monday through Friday, on WPHT 1210 AM in the Philadelphia region that includes southern New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, but is available on dickmorris.com all the time. You can link to it and hear the program. Well, every day on the program at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, I'm going to give a history discussion for about 5 or 7 minutes, just like the one I'm doing now. So if you want to get a more complete dossier of my thoughts about history, tune in then. It'll be kind of fun. That's 4 o'clock every Monday through Friday on my website, dickmorris.com, or on WPHT 1210 AM in the Philadelphia region. Thanks a lot.